Hey guys, welcome back to OrmsTV, and today we are checking out the brand new, just released SONY A7 IV.
Yeah, and you guys are going to hear some noises in the background, and obviously there's some bags hanging here. So we are in the Armoury Boxing Club down in Cape Town, and we figured what better location to showcase one of the best hybrid cameras on the market. Come out, shoot some boxing, get some portraits, some action, some fast-moving subjects, some video, little bit of everything. Let's get into it.
All right guys, so first up, as per normal, we'll be running through the specs of this unit. Megapixel has bumped up from 24 up to 33 megapixels. It's quite a nice touch on this unit. You're still shooting at 10 frames per second. You've got 759 autofocus points to select from. From those points, you've got always the fancy things like face, human eye detection, you've got animal detection, and also new bird detection. Now, quite a nice upgrade from the Mark III to the Mark IV is the buffer size, a massive 800 shots, which is including JPEG and RAW. That's quite a nice little touch that Sony has added in this unit.
And then in terms of your video features, also really nicely stepped up from where the A7 III was. So this unit will now shoot a 4K at a maximum of 60 frames per second. It'll do internal 10-bit 422, which is very, very handy, as your A7 III only did 8-bit internally. Then that autofocus that you mentioned, that now allows you to continuously track faces, eyes, all of that kind of thing while you're recording video, which if I'm correct, the A7 III didn't really allow you to do. The A7 IV also has S-Log 3 and Sony's S-Cinetone, which is obviously quite a nice upgrade from where the A7 III was, and brings the camera very much in line with the A7S III and the A1. In addition to that, the image stabilization has also been uprated ever so slightly, so your IBIS can now be pushed to 5.5 stops, which again is a nice little upgrade that you have in the unit.
Okay guys, next up we're going to talk about ergonomics, and first up, the first thing that I realized about this camera is the beefier grip. It's super comfortable to hold and probably one of the nicest Sonys to hold, in my opinion. Sony keeping it universal, they added a CF Express Type A card in this unit and 2 SD card slots. Obviously, being a Sony, it does have the articulating screen, so that making it super handy for shooting those odd angles, and also if you do want to make some sort of YouTube content.
I'm going to second what Andre is saying there. This grip is phenomenal. Fits into the hand really, really well. Gives you a very solid hold on the camera itself. Now, the other nice thing on this unit is that you now have a full-size HDMI output on here, which is very, very handy. Gives you that nice 4K footage. You obviously have Sony's FZ100 battery, so giving you decent battery life out of this unit. Then something that's completely new on here is these stacked dials over here. Now, the bottom dial has a little release that you press in, and that allows you to switch between your stills and video modes. And then on the top, you have your traditional selector for all of the standard things that you would expect. Nice dials everywhere, exactly as you would expect, customizable buttons. Then the top layout here is actually very similar to what you see on other cameras in the Sony lineup now, like your A7S III and your A1, with your dedicated record button, an additional custom button right there, on-off switch, very, very nicely laid out, falls into the hand really well. Just an impressive package. And one last thing that I want to mention about this is actually how solid the camera feels.
Yeah.
Like it feels like a workhorse. It feels like you can put this thing absolutely through the ringer and it'll be perfectly fine. It's solid, it's beefy, it's chunky, it feels like a well-made piece of kit. While we were talking about the ergonomics on this unit, I just want to mention that the A7 IV has the new generation menu system that Sony brought out with the A7S III and the A1. And man, I love that menu so much.
Yeah.
It is such a big improvement, especially when you're shooting back-to-back on a camera with the older menu system. Really, really worth that upgrade just for the menu system.
Just keeps the ecosystem sort of all in one, right?
Exactly, and so much easier to use.
And it's also touchscreen as well, if I'm right?
Absolutely, yeah, fully touchscreen enabled. And the A7 IV also has a slightly higher resolution viewfinder compared to the A7 III. I believe it's a similar viewfinder as what was in the A7R III.
Yeah.
So not quite up there with the A7S III, but Again, at the price point, you're not really expecting that level of performance.
So on that note of image quality or higher resolution, let's jump to photo quality. I mean, this is jumping from 24 to 33 megapixels, so obviously there is a huge bump up in detail. This being a Sony sensor, you will be getting some very good low light performance as well. We'll be showing up some images that we've taken, some sort of interior shots here in the gym, and also some really cool portraits of our coach getting ready, sort of getting those gloves set up. And obviously, the quality is phenomenal. We were shooting with all Sony lenses, 24-70, 16-35. My favorite though, the 85-1.4.
So good.
I think it's so good.
Now, even though the stills performance that we're seeing right now is really, really good, it is worth mentioning that the product that we have, the A7 IV that we were actually given, is like an extreme pre-production model.
Super pre-production.
Very, very pre-production. So we don't really want to deep dive on the quality and give a full review on the unit because it's simply not fair at this stage in the game. And we'd rather save that for a future video. So for now, what I do want to say is that the photo quality is exactly what I expect. It is precisely where it is supposed to be. The low light performance is good. The sharpness is good. Obviously, paired with Sony's G Master lenses, it's exactly what you expect. The color rendition is fantastic. The dynamic range is solid. It is everything that I wanted in an upgrade from the A7 III. It really fits into that all-round hybrid shooter environment perfectly.
And I have to take my hats off to Sony because they bumped up the megapixel to 33, but somehow they increased the buffer rate up to 800 images, which is crazy thinking that you're shooting with a camera with higher resolution. Now, a brand new feature in the A7 IV series is the new bird detection mode, which unfortunately today we could not test, but we were able to test the continuous tracking mode and also the face detection and eye detection mode on all these awesome coaches that we were shooting. Now, there was a specific shot they would be shooting continuous, so that'll be 10 frames per second. And as you can see from the sequence, the bag was coming in and out of the frame as he was throwing the punches, but his face and eyes were specifically always in focus.
Sony's essentially taken the autofocus system out of the A7S III and the A1 and moved it down their lineup, and now you have that autofocus system in the A7 IV. And the simple conclusion here is that it works extremely well. It locks on, it stays tight, the sharpness remains there, it doesn't lose your subject matter. It's a good, solid performance autofocus system, and it's exactly what I want in a do-everything camera. It's perfect. Now, that same level of autofocus performance from stills carries through into the video shooting. And again, it's a system that comes down from cameras much higher up in Sony's ecosystem. So the A7 III never allowed you to do continuous tracking autofocus while shooting video, specifically the eye and face detect autofocus. It just didn't allow it to happen. On the A7 IV, you get that now. You get that beautiful continuous tracking. You'll see it in the video that we're putting up right now. It's exactly what you want. It makes life easier. It's perfect in a hybrid shooting environment. It works. We've seen it in other Sony cameras. It's solid. It does what it's supposed to do.
Now, talking about making life easy, the Sony A7 IV offers you some great color profiles for video. So the S-Log 3, great for the guys that want to do some hardcore color grading, or if you want the easy, flexible way out, the Cinetone is going to be the better option for you. Now, the Sony A7 IV does offer you 4K 60, but there was something kind of funny that we realized when shooting in that mode.
Yes, and it's a bit of a big one. The camera crops in when you go to 4K 50 or 4K 60. We know that it's not firmware related, so I'm thinking that it might be to create differentiation between other models in the Sony lineup, but it is unfortunate. And while it's not necessarily game-breaking, it is a problem because we see so many cameras coming out now that does not crop when you're pushing your frame rates in 4K. And I really would have liked to see the Sony A7 IV go full 4K 60 with no crop, giving me that full sensor readout. But maybe a little firmware update from Sony in future could solve that problem. We'll see what happens.
Now, in conclusion with the Sony A7 IV, we do need to say that this is more of a first look than a proper review because we had very limited time with the camera. and also it is a very pre-production unit. Now jumping back to the older model, the Mark III, I do need to say that was kind of a special camera for me. It is probably the best all-rounder in that sort of range, especially when clients came in and they want something good for video, good for stills. That was kind of like my first pick. Jumping to the new Sony Mark IV, that kind of just raises the bar. You've got more megapixels, you've got better video, you've got way better autofocus performance, and everything is cohesive to the newer Sonys like the A7S III and the A1. From my opinion, I think Sony really did a really good job and they really took it to sort of the next level.
I wish I had something else to say there, but I really actually don't. All that they did was they took everything that was great from the A7 III and they kept it. And then they went to all of their other models and they cherry-picked features that would work well in this ultimate hybrid camera, and they brought it down and they stuffed it in there, and it works. Yes, there is a little issue with the video crop, 4K 60, but at the end of the day, if you exclude that, if you completely exclude 4K 60, you have a 4K 30 camera giving you 10-bit 422 internal, you have a massive bump up in autofocus performance, a very decent bump up in stills performance. That new sensor is really, really nice from everything that we can see. You have the autofocus performance in video that you lacked in the previous model. It's like they took everything from the A7 III and sprinkled a little bit of magic sauce on there, and it just works. And where Sony's positioned this camera to be, as you said, that camera for absolutely everybody, they completely nailed it. If you want to walk in and you want to be a professional stills photographer, A7 IV. Get started in professional video, A7 IV. It is the perfect unit. From wedding photographers to people who shoot commercials to dedicated portrait photographers, street photographers, casual videographers, even vloggers. Anybody can take this camera, use it, get amazing results every single time. And that's what the A7 series camera is for. And the A7 IV nails it.
So guys, that'll be our first look on the brand new Sony A7 Mark IV. We really hope you guys enjoyed it, and we would like to thank Armoury Boxing for hosting us as well.
Yes guys, and as always, if you enjoy the content we put out, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us out a lot. And if you enjoyed this video specifically, hit that like button, we really appreciate it. And if there's anything you'd like to know about the all-new Sony A7 IV, comment down below. We love hearing from you guys. Until next time, cheers.
Bye-bye.